Hey, what's up guys, it's Liam or Weagle on Your Overwatch, back with a new video. Today we're going to be talking about how to not counter yourself, a little bit about team comps, what ones are good on certain points, and I have some very specific gameplay which has some very interesting examples. Before we get into it, I just want to thank everybody that entered our Razor giveaway, and thank you to Razor for supplying the gear. The winner has been selected, who is Mika. We announced this on Twitter. The gear's already on the way, and when he gets it, we'll also show that in a video. Thank you everybody that entered. Now, the gameplay I'm going to be showing you guys is on Anubis, and on the first point what happens is I'm playing Tracer, and you know when you're just not feeling it. Well, I got picked off very early and my team got rolled from there. Probably entirely, completely my fault. Now, on the second point, I was a little bit nervous. I didn't know what to play, so I decided I would go with a comfort pick of playing Mei, who is one of my best heroes. Now, what's interesting about this is if you look at the team comps when I take Mei, other than the fact that they don't have a Lucio to speed boost, everything they have counters Mei. Everything is either long distance or it's high mobility. The wall is not going to get much value, but you know, I'm on a comfort pick so I can carry out with it a little bit. However, throughout the game, as it progresses, the enemy team make worse and worse picks, and by the end of it, have no initiation whatsoever. They drop the Winston, they drop the Pharah, they drop the Tracer because I kill her, and that's the premise for this video. I want to identify what a win condition is and explain how to figure out what the enemy team are doing, and also don't counter yourself like these guys I'm playing did. I think the first thing that's really important to know is that the second point of any 2CP map is very, very difficult. It takes a complete team wipe. It takes your team to be synergistic, playing together and going in at the same time. Now, in matchmaking, this doesn't necessarily that you plan to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're playing really well as a team. Sometimes it might just mean two people happen to get a pick at the same time. You go to the point and win out from there. But in order to win, the condition is you have to get in, kill them as quickly as possible and take the point. Now, what the enemy team does in this game is something that a lot of people do, and they're thinking about their mistakes on the heroes that they're playing. Now, I'm playing Mei and they counter me, but I hit some nice shots on the Tracer and we managed to kill the Pharah as well. And instead of treating these mistakes as misplays, what the enemy team are doing is actually identifying the problem wrongly. They're changing their picks because I'm killing them as Mei, but they're actually making worse picks. The picks that they made were not the problem, it was the play that was the problem. And this is a really, really common issue throughout matchmaking. People will very often say, get off of this hero, it's not working. Well, because it's not working isn't necessarily a problem with the pick. Sometimes the enemy team will just outplay you, and sometimes the win condition is what you already have, and keeping composure in the game in order to regroup and then go back in and initiate properly as Winston is what you need to be doing. Because he dove in and I froze him once and he got hooked and we killed him does not mean that the Winston is a bad pick. It means that he jumped in at the wrong time, his team weren't there to follow up, and we managed to isolate them individually and their team crumbled around it. So the picks that they made were definitely not the problem. Now, as I say, the win condition is overwhelm the enemy team, win the point, cap the point, win the game. Now, the opposite is a loss condition, which is exactly what the enemy team did. In this example, the enemy team played into my pick, making increasingly unsuitable picks against me, and as I'm able to just outskill their DPS heroes a couple of times in a row, they make the mistake of thinking that the pick is wrong, not the play, and this is exactly what went wrong. I'm playing Mei, and everybody should know that's playing against Mei, the worst thing you can do is have low mobility, zero initiation, heroes, ground-based DPS. They ended up with McCree, they ended up with Zarya and Roadhog, no speed boost, no initiation, and ended up playing into me perfectly when their picks were never the issue. They just didn't coordinate right. Another mistake that's made in Overwatch a lot of the time, back to me as Mei killing the Pharah or the Tracer example, is people misunderstanding what a counter is. I'm not a counter to them because I outplayed them. They still more counter me than I do to them. However, people are very misled by what counter means. In other games, especially fighting games, a counter literally means turn the play against them, where in Overwatch, it's quite the opposite. A Genji can sometimes beat a Winston if he plays well and hits the right shurikens and dashes, and a Winston can out-footsie battle the Reaper in his bubble in order to win the game. So what an actual counter is as well is another reason that the enemy team struggled here. There's a lot of reasons this can be happening. It can be misinterpretation from what happens from the pro level, because they would use the word counter a lot as casters would. It could happen from YouTube videos. It could happen for lots of different reasons. But simply, matchmaking is disorganized for the most part. Throughout all of matchmaking, there's rarely ideal comps, and even sometimes when there are ideal comps, they won't even win to worse comps because people are more comfortable on certain heroes. So people get very used to this disorganized play, and the reason most people hate 2CP is because it's simply not possible very often to get away with disorganized play. Win conditions are important in every part of Overwatch, but on 2CP, on second point, the win condition is very set and very clear, and it's much harder to go off of the beaten path when trying to win this condition. You cannot simply just take Roadhog Zarya and walk into mate. It might work on King of the Hill, but it's way less likely to work in 2CP. Now, the reason this sometimes works is that maybe your initiation is so bad that you just keep dying and dying and dying over and over again. Meanwhile, they're using their ults to kill you, and oftentimes what will happen is your team will just be building ults at the choke until you have 6 of them, and you'll go in and kill things. Now, as a little side note, have you noticed that at 2CP, a lot of the time, the attacking team end up winning in overtime? But if you actually pay attention, it isn't because of the overtime and the slower spawns a lot of the time. The actual reason is they had to commit because there's only a few seconds on the clock and they dive in and win, meeting that win condition. If this was just done earlier on and people were more inclined to just go for it and get in there, I think 2CP would be won more often. Instead, it's often at the choke, and if you happen to get a couple of picks, you might take it, and if you don't get them picks, usually people are just going to full hold you. So how could the enemies have avoided all of these mistakes? How could the enemies have met that win condition in this game? Well, keep the picks that they initially had. Something we've mentioned forever. Since the game came out, you've got to have a Lucio on 2CP in order to make that win condition so much easier. Swap out the Mercy or even the Ana, you've got to have a Lucio. Dive in with that Winston, Pharah goes in with Tracer as well, and it's pretty much an easy win from there. They massively countered themselves. They doubted their own picks, they doubted their own ability because they lost 1 or 2 pushes to simply just us outskilling them. It was nothing to do with their picks, and that is the lesson here, guys. The picks that you make are not as important as the play, and this applies to every part of Overwatch. Goes back to why sometimes do you win with a terrible comp in your games when you play Overwatch. Everyone has. Everyone's won with 4 DPS or 4 tanks or 5 tanks or 6 DPS. Everybody's won this at some point. And the reason is because their play was more important than their picks. But sometimes, and it should be most of the time, but you never know in matchmaking, your picks should be really important most of the time. And when they are, just like they were in this Anubis game, that's when you have to realize that the pick is more important to get the play right. And it's very difficult sometimes distinguishing between the two. Just because you're not having impact on a hero doesn't mean it's the wrong pick. It means you're probably playing it wrong. If your Winston's not diving in right, then it's hard for your Tracer to follow up on damage. If they're not going in early enough and you as Pharah are poking in too early and you die too early, you know, it's not the pick. It's the play, and that's the lesson, and I hope this helped you out, guys. The last thing I want to mention is that I didn't play Mei amazingly well in this game, but they definitely made it easier for me, and a shout out to the tanks on my team as well, who were both counter-initiating quite well for the most part, and again, this slow, horrible comp that the enemy team are running is also very susceptible to the tanks on my team. The reason I didn't talk about the tanks as well throughout the whole video is because it would have been a little bit confusing. But playing slow is really bad anyway, and playing slow into counter dive and a Mei as well is just like the worst thing you could possibly do. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Have you experienced this in games? Because I have. It happens all the time. Be sure to check out our Twitter and our Discord where you guys can find the Winston main of your dreams. Be sure to check out our new Destiny channel and Patreon if them things float your boat. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed. Have a great day as always. Take care and peace, people.